to my personality to in a bit
Mm-hmm.
is in that job. So you have all this context from the story, right? Like I was a salesperson. I never coded before.
Right.
I got seated a couple things. I like basically try to like force my way into this program. I go through the whole interview. I'm showing up every day. I'm like busting my ass to get a job. My first opportunity gets presented to me, being an intern for a marketing team. And I show up to this interview. And a couple of things that are kind of funny in hindsight. Flatiron taught us Ruby,
Okay.
which is a language.
Right.
And there are a lot of languages. There's a lot of things. We could talk a little bit about that in a bit. But in that interview, they were like, we need CSS and HTML. That's what we need for this internship for marketing. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know HTML, CSS. And they were like, we need someone by Monday next week, HTML, CSS to get started.
Wow.
And I told myself, well, I guess I'm learning HTML and CSS this weekend.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I didn't accept the fact, because I feel like something that frustrates me that I see with people every once in a while is they look for a reason to say no. Right.
Yes.
And that was that opportunity, because we're always trying to fulfill a goal. Like in our life, we're always looking at what goal that we want to fulfill. There's a book called The Courage to Be Disliked. It's one of my favorite books, slightly controversial, but I still think it's a great read. And it talks about the idea, like you're always trying to fulfill a current goal. You may say, some people may say, I want a job, I want this job, but their goal is actually to not get that job. So what they're looking, but they can't really say that because it's not socially acceptable.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because they're afraid of the work. They have anxiety. Like they're always trying to fulfill a current goal. And you know, for a lot of people, being like, I learned Ruby and you're asking me to do HTML, CSS, that would fulfill that goal
Of saying no.
To say no.
Yeah.
But I had a very clear goal of I need a fucking job. I'm sleeping on the floor, on this mattress on the floor, and commuting 2 hours for the past 6 months, busting my ass. I need some money. I need to start earning a little bit so I can take care of for that interview. So I just told myself mentally, yeah, I'll just learn HTML, CSS. I'll figure it out, right? And again, telling myself weird things to help me like conceptualize what was happening around me. I remember I told myself the story, well, if I don't learn HTML and CSS and they fire me, at least I'll have money for a week before they realize. And then I can, you know what? I had 2 months of Flatiron school. I'll just go back there and figure it out. Right. Like I just told myself these like stories to just help me keep moving forward. Even if the stories were silly, it just gave me some strength to like do hard things or make hard decisions.
Because if you don't do that, then you'll just let your mind go into stress mode and panic mode, right?
And I think if you're someone looking to get into tech, adopt a similar mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I have the mindset of there's a problem, we solve it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's really my mindset. So the reason why I say that is I consider myself very T-shaped. So if you think like the letter T, I go very wide in tech, meaning like I'm comfortable jumping into
different
almost any area, any part of the infrastructure, any part of the stack. Because if there's a problem, you know, to me, it's not acceptable to say, oh, I don't work on the back end system, so I'm not gonna if there's no one else that's more equipped to handle it, and you know, you're that line of defense. So, you know, as an engineer, really in anywhere, if there's a problem, just try to be creative and find a way of solving it. Best practices are best practices. How we build something in one language may look different in another language, but a lot of like the core principles are somewhat like transferable, right? Okay. At least when it comes to building things responsibly. So first, like I adopt that mindset. So like very T, that's wide. But my specialty is building like client interfaces. So what that means for the web is it's like JavaScript and the entire JavaScript ecosystem.
Okay.
So that's like that's Node for backend JavaScript. On the client, you know, that could be a JavaScript framework like Vue, React, just vanilla plain JS if it calls for it, okay. HTML, CSS. And there's like anything with client interfaces, because there's a lot of knowledge that's not just coding that's important. Like one is like accessibility. Like okay. I care a lot about accessibility. I care a lot about performance. I care a lot about these adjacent things, UI, UX, how they like connect and like how that experience is for the user. Like you can code and not think about any of this stuff, and the quality of your product will suffer, right?
Right.
And you can not be a great coder, but be very knowledgeable on these areas, and you can still bring a lot of value to
To
a
the
company,
table.
right?
Okay.
So accessibility, performance, like all these things like are important. So because tech to me is very fuzzy, it's not like I do this one thing and I'm always doing this one thing. It's more like we have a problem that we're solving. Let's say the problem is users have to sign up for our platform or
Yeah.
subscribe to our podcast. Like if that's the problem you're solving, it's not good enough to be like, oh, I can code it. You have to think about, is this button placed in the right area? Is it visible enough? When I click the button, are all the things happening that are supposed to happen? How do I know that this button's being clicked? Can I track that event somewhere?
Right.
Right?
Where are people dropping off
so
at? Right.
right. So it's not just as an engineer because we're so close to the code, we're so close to the problem. That means we're also close to the solutions. To me, it's like you have to view it holistically and be willing to learn quickly. And I would say that's like my second piece of advice. The first being like view yourself as a problem solver and don't limit yourself to just like
One
the
language.
current language
Right.
that you know. If you solve problems, you'll learn the coding because that's just you have the code to solve the
Right.
problem. So if you start from a problem solution mindset, the pieces become clear. My second piece of advice is like if you had to learn one skill set in general, not just coding, but definitely helps for coding. Be really comfortable with learning
Okay.
and like constantly being willing to grow.